Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Martinez, and I'm on the State and Local Government Industry Solutions team here at Esri, and I will be your moderator today. I would like to welcome you to the October 2021 edition of the State and Local Connect webinar series, Where to Look When You Need Data, your guide to the largest geospatial data resources. This webinar series, which we've been running for over a year now, is focused on community building and information sharing specific to our state and local users like yourselves. And just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording within the next week or so. We will have time at the end of the webinar to answer your questions, so please feel free to type them in the GoToWebinar questions pane throughout the presentation, and we will get to as many as time permits. Also, there will be a survey that will pop up on your screen after the webinar ends. If you can please take a minute to answer just a few questions, we would greatly appreciate it as we use that information to guide our future webinars. Now I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Bern Zukowski. For those of you that don't already know Bern, he is our technical evangelist and senior principal product manager. So Bern, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks for that, Megan, and welcome everybody and happy Wednesday. Today we're going to cover a variety of different topics that relate to data or content, as I like to describe it, and we're going to cover the Living Atlas as well as a few other products and discuss some of the demographic offerings and things as we go. I'll be doing some demos after I finish the PowerPoints, and then of course we'll have time for questions and answers. So please keep those coming, and Megan will sort those out, and we'll take those towards the end. So welcome everybody. So let's begin by talking about ready-to-use content, and we like to say that ArcGIS includes ready-to-use content, and that's a simple statement that actually carries a lot of weight and importance. So this ready-to-use content is ArcGIS Living Atlas of the world and a few other things which we'll talk about in a few moments. The Living Atlas is the foremost collection of worldwide geographic information, and it contains layers and maps and apps and much more now from Esri, from our partners, from our distributors, and also from the global GIS community. And this is very much a living atlas. The content is curated actively by our team. It's authoritative. The sources are from the authoritative root of that data, and it's continually updated. The update intervals range from every 5 minutes to sometimes once yearly. So we can explore that in a little bit and talk about when those updates might happen. Now, the most significant role of Living Atlas is in delivering immediate value across the ArcGIS system. So it's the foundation upon which you can build your own maps and apps. You can also support workflows using this content. You can perform analysis. It's integrated into ArcGIS Pro. And you can also communicate and share your knowledge with others using Living Atlas content. So many people find that it's just a great foundation for your maps because it does include a variety of different base maps, and it also has lots of operational layers that you can use on top of that and combine that with your own operational layers. Now, you'll find access to the Living Atlas across the entire system. So it's deeply integrated and integral to ArcGIS Pro. It's found in Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. It's also used in field apps, business apps, and just a lot more. It's also found in story maps. So when you author maps directly within story maps, you can connect to the Living Atlas and use content that you find there to embellish your stories. Of course, many of you are using the map viewer. If you're in ArcGIS Online, you know you have some choices now between what we call Map Viewer Classic and the new Map Viewer. And there's also the Scene Viewer. So the Living Atlas is exposed directly in those contexts. It's also found in your organization in the Content tab. In your organization, you'll find Living Atlas as one of the choices there, and that will bring that up. Now, there are differences between what you'll see in ArcGIS Enterprise in terms of Living Atlas content, and also what you'll see in ArcGIS Online in terms of Living Atlas content. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. The primary one is that some of the Living Atlas content is subscriber content, meaning that you have to have an ArcGIS account to access it. And we'll talk about ways that you can make that publicly accessible if you're building apps to extend out to a broader audience. But that's one of the reasons. But the good news is that later on this year, hopefully with one of the updates to Enterprise, all of that becomes seamless, and Enterprise administrators will be able to bring in all of the online Living Atlas content into their Enterprise. Right now you're looking at a subset of the entire content. A lot of that is because in Living Atlas, things happen all the time. They're published automatically whenever they're ready to go, and Enterprise users don't see that content until they get their next update installed. And we can talk a little bit more about that later if there's interest in discussing Enterprise. Now, the Living Atlas website is something I'm going to demonstrate and show how you can use effectively. It's really a one-stop destination for Living Atlas news, for learning how to use content, for discovering it, and also for community participation. So we have a very active community maps program, as well as ways for you to share your work within the Living Atlas, and I'll show you how you can do that. But this is a great one-stop shop to go for everything Living Atlas. A lot of people don't know about this, but it's a worthwhile bookmarking, and I'll show you why in just a few moments. Now, one of the most powerful and potent parts of that website is the Living Atlas Browse tab, and that's where you can discover Living Atlas content using keywords. You can filter by type, by category, by region, and even by date. So for example, you could look at things that have been published or updated over the past month or past year, or even enter a custom date. Now, what makes this such an important resource is that you can sign in to this website, and once you do, you can favorite things as you discover them, or you can add base maps to your base map gallery if you're able to do that as an administrator, or you can begin making maps directly from this site. So it's a really good place to start, regardless of what your ultimate workflow will be. So I'll show you how to leverage that. After using the search and the filtering tools, you can begin making your maps right away using Map Viewer or ArcGIS Pro. And as I mentioned, you can also favorite things so that you can kind of bookmark them for quick access later on. Now, when we talk about what's in Living Atlas, I use the word content, and it's a distinction that I make because it's not just raw data that needs to be manipulated or refined. It's ready-to-use content that's been crafted for the best experience across a variety of different workflows and uses. Now, base maps are one of the primary dial tone elements of Living Atlas content. So they are the foundation for maps across the entire ArcGIS system. So in ArcGIS Pro, your base map gallery is coming from Living Atlas, and it's been curated by your organization so that when you sign in with ArcGIS Pro, you're seeing your organization's base map gallery. Likewise for enterprise users and also ArcGIS Online users. So these base maps are a part of the foundation for you doing your work. And they're continually updated from authoritative sources such as SafeGraph and HERE and others, and they also include contributions through the Community Maps program. So through that program, you can contribute your high-resolution imagery to the Living Atlas imagery base map, or you can add detailed vector information to our vector base map. So there's tools that enable you to do that. So it's also not just something that Esri publishes, but something that the entire GIS community can contribute to as well. Now, of course, there's lots of different layers. There's feature layers, imagery layers, elevation layers, there's live feeds, there's time-enabled layers, there's even layers which kind of push things out to provide a forecast view of what might be happening. Now, many of these layers that you'll find as you browse a Living Atlas are also compiled and used in a variety of ready-to-use maps covering focused topics like climate, earthquakes, weather, wildfire, and so forth. Now, these maps are finely crafted and they include expressive pop-ups and state-of-the-art cartography using the latest style options that Map Viewer allows us. So that these can be viewed and explored and understood easily and also be used right away. Now, Living Atlas also includes apps, and some of these are custom apps, and some of these are also apps built using our configurable instant apps. And they also include stories, dashboards, and also web experience. So all of these things can be brought together in many different ways. Much of this is ready to share with others, or you can assemble your own maps that you will use in your own apps using Living Atlas content. And beyond that, there's actually some fairly recent things that have become a part of the Living Atlas, and these include tools. And these are primarily intended for use in ArcGIS Pro. These are things like raster function templates and pre-trained deep learning packages and more that are ready for you to begin using right away in ArcGIS Pro. Now, one of the things that you'll find as you browse and look for Living Atlas content is you'll see these Living Atlas content badges. And they're little indicators that tell you kind of what's going on with that source. When you see the Living Atlas badge, you know that it's Esri curated content. And that, of course, is what the Living Atlas is full of. So all of those items will have that. Authoritative are ones that are recommended by Esri. So the ones badged as authoritative are recommended by Esri because they are popular, they've met certain basic criteria, and we just recommend them for use. Now, subscriber content is also one of the badges that you'll see, and what this means is that when you use this, it requires an ArcGIS organizational account for access. That doesn't mean that you can't use these in public-facing applications. You can bring these into instant apps where they're automatically proxied for, and you can share these with others, with a public audience, put them in story maps, with anything, with anyone really. There's another kind of a more minor category now. Most of the content is not premium, but premium indicates that it not only requires an organizational account to access, but it also consumes credits. And part of the reason for this is that some of that content is content that we owe the contributors on the back end to. So we just sort of put this in there as kind of a stop against anyone that kind of uses this in some kind of viral case. The credits consumed are absolutely minimal for most users. So it's just a little extra stop check for us and making sure that we can provide the associated monies to the contributors for that content. So anyway, those are the different types of content with the badges that you'll run into. Now, the Living Atlas base maps are the primary dial tone elements, as I mentioned earlier, and this is the foundation for much of the work that you're going to do. Except for imagery, these are vector tile base maps. So those are fairly new, and we've just recently deprecated our raster tile base maps. These are much easier for us to update. They require a whole lot of less processing. It's much easier for you to contribute to these as well. All of these share a common vector foundation, and there's a schema that is applied to these that you can also edit as well to change the look and feel of each of these. So these base maps are continually updated from authoritative sources, and they also include contributions through the Community Maps program. Now, one of the advantages of these vector tile base maps and vector tile layers in general is that they can be customized. So the vector tile style editor is one of the applications that you can use, but also just newly introduced in the September release for ArcGIS Online, newly introduced in the new map viewer are some blending and effects capabilities that can also be applied to create a custom look and feel for your base maps or modify any base map for a special purpose. And we'll take a look at some of these. They're actually really quite interesting and also really quite powerful. Now, the greater Living Atlas community is one of its pillars of strength, and it represents shared content and contributions from the global community as well as partners and distributors. There are a couple of ways that you can contribute. One is just by sharing your content. So community contributions of all types are encouraged, not just maps and layers, but also apps and story maps and dashboards. Now, when you submit this content, it's reviewed by Esri staff and has to meet certain criteria, has to be well documented, a good item description, and also details like finely crafted pop-ups and things like that. And after it goes through that, then it becomes accepted and becomes part of the Living Atlas, so people can discover your work in the Living Atlas. And acceptance means that it's cleared the Living Atlas standards bar and can be placed among the best content in the Living Atlas collection. Another way to contribute is through what we call the Community Maps program. So by helping out in this program, you can help to build the Living Atlas of the world by contributing base map details. You can contribute your imagery, you can contribute address data to the World Geocoding Service, and you can enhance elevation and bathymetry. There's also tools which allow you to redline any things that need to be corrected. For example, maybe a misspelling or a place name that's not in the correct place. So there are redlining tools there that allow you to highlight those areas that the base maps team will go and consider and make updates as appropriate. Now, there's also a variety of other helper apps that have been recently updated to support all of these types of contributions, and they're also found via enrollment in the Community Maps program. So this is a very vibrant and actively growing crowdsourced community that helps improve our base maps. Now, OpenStreetmap is a collaborative project that's been around for quite some time, and its original goal was to create a free editable map of the world. And up in the top left there, you'll see a map changing with some additional details. You'll see building footprints show up. So what's happened recently is that we publish these OSM vector-based maps, and we actually apply our own styles to those to create unique things beyond just the standard OSM look and feel. So we have a street style that's based on the OSM base map. We have a light gray style, a relief style, a imagery hybrid style, blueprint, and others. What's happened recently is that the daylight map distribution of OSM data is now what we are using to update our hosted OSM base maps. So the daylight distribution is supported by Facebook, and it's supplemented with additional building data from Microsoft, and they use AI on imagery to be able to extract those building footprints. So this is a really valuable source with lots of details that you can use. So the default OpenStreetMap style is rendered using OSM cartography, and these other styles are available, and they can be discovered in the Living Atlas. You can include these in your base map galleries as well. The OSM daylight maps are updated every month by Esri with the latest version of the OSM daylight data. So this is a very timely and always up-to-date base map that you can use. Now, Living Atlas live feeds are truly the living parts of the Living Atlas. They're widely used for environmental and emergency preparedness and response. These are auto-updating near real-time layers that can deliver at the moment situational awareness. So many of these are updated every 5 minutes. Some of them are updated daily depending on the source and also depending on the content. They're published using something we call the live feeds methodology, which is something that we've been working on for years, and that's been evolved by the Living Atlas team to handle highly dynamic content such as this and make it totally reliable and easily updatable. So the updates, as they happen every 5 minutes, they just happen in line, and you never notice. You just see the latest available information. Now, all of these live feeds are available across the entire ArcGIS ecosystem, and they allow you to look at things in real time. Recently, one of the things that we published is something called the Living Atlas Live Feed Status. So this is a way that you can monitor what's going on with the live feeds, and you can look at trends, you can look at when it will be updated next, you can see whether the trend is higher use or lower use, and this is an important tool for customers that want to improve what they know, and it helps, it's transparency for you and helps you monitor things. So you can subscribe to an RSS feed, and that'll provide any notifications about the service. It won't notify you of updates because obviously you don't want to have an update notice every 5 minutes for some of these feeds, but it will provide you notices in case there's some maintenance that's happening, or in case one of the sources has gone down. These are not necessarily published by Esri, rather they are extracted from the source, and Esri uses the live feeds methodology to poll the source and continually update these. Now, another collection of content which is fairly new is that from the NGDA. So this is 100 layers that's sourced directly from the US government agency services. Now, where possible, these services are cached and rehosted on ArcGIS Online from the federally maintained services, and they're checked for updates every week. So for those of you looking for those foundational US government data, this is now available. It's also licensed under a Creative Commons license, so you can do whatever you may wish to do with these. You can download it, use it in other applications, and so forth. Now, Living Atlas apps are a really interesting collection of easy-to-use apps that I think unlock the potential of Living Atlas content. And they help you discover this rich content and learn about how it can be used. And a lot of these are ways or places where you can go and you can actually start authoring maps from here. So they're not just interesting, but they're also useful and help you support many different workflows. Now, Esri Maps for Public Policy is another Living Atlas application. It's a collection of expertly crafted, expressive Living Atlas maps that deal with policy, deal with information that can help spark conversation and allow users to begin exploring their communities immediately. And there's hundreds of these layers that help policymakers visualize and understand what's going on in your particular communities. Now, the interesting thing about this app is you can actually collect maps and then you can share them easily with a link with others. So it makes them eminently useful and widely available to anybody. Now, Living Atlas also contains ready-to-use tools in the form of rule packages, pre-trained deep learning models, raster function templates, and even experience templates, which help users across the ArcGIS system enable their workflows and perform essential tasks. So some of these are really interesting. For example, there's pre-trained deep learning models which you can apply to imagery, which will extract building footprints or highlight cars or look for pools or look for other aspects. And we'll take a quick look at these in the Living Atlas. So these are super useful for ArcGIS Pro users that want to leverage this content for doing additional analysis. Now, as you can tell, there's an awful lot going on with Living Atlas all the time. And one of the best ways to kind of keep up with things and even go back and see what you may have missed is the Living Atlas News. And that's one of the blogs that I publish. You'll find it on blogs.arcgis.com. And you can just do a search for Living Atlas News. And I've been doing issues since past July 2020. And you can go back and review. You can stay up to date with all the things that have been happening. And you can go back and look and see what you may have missed. That's a really good resource with direct links to all the content. Beyond all this, there's Living Atlas demographic content, which is embedded in a variety of other applications like Business Analyst online. Some of these can be used to do automatic report generation. So we have a pay-as-you-go demographic report capability. So there's lots of different demographic content which is available inside the Living Atlas and also outside the Living Atlas. So we pull from a variety of different sources, which are listed there on the left, and they're embedded in the product experience for things like Living Atlas, Business Analyst, ArcGIS Insights, ArcGIS for Power BI, and more. So there's other options if you're focused on demographics. One of my favorite products, and an often overlooked one by many GIS users, is Business Analyst, which comes in web, desktop, and mobile forms. And this is a really awesome product for you to use even if your focus is on doing local GIS. We'll take a quick look at this during the demonstrations, but I did want to highlight this because it's really a excellent way to explore things. It has these really highly expressive and interactive charts that you can use and explore. So it's an excellent application, and I highly recommend that you take a look at this. One of the things I did mention is that we also have pay-as-you-go on-demand reports, and these are $50 per report. So if you're looking at citing a retail store location or just want to learn more about where your doing something, you can get these detailed demographic reports, and they're just pay as you go. Of course, a lot of this information is already available in Living Atlas and through things like Business Analyst, but if you just want a simple report, this is a good place to go. So with that, let's take a look at some of these things, and we'll cruise through some demonstrations and then hopefully have some time for questions here. So let's see here. One of the first things I wanted to showcase was some of the vector base maps. So here I've zoomed into Pittsburgh, and I have a variety of different base map styles, which I'll highlight here in the Pittsburgh area. So if you look at things as I sort of bring these up, you'll see that the content really is all the same. It's just different styles have been applied to kind of bring out different features or make it more suitable as a substrate for whatever apps or whatever maps that you might want to work on. And there's a whole bunch of these. Recently, we've also done some work with accessible base maps. So those that are concerned about accessibility, for those that are visually impaired, there's lots of different choices here. There's some creative choices and lots of others. And again, these are all discoverable within the Living Atlas itself. And you can, not all of these are in the Esri default base map gallery, but you can easily add them. So I mentioned the OSM base maps, again, based on the daylight distribution. We do a similar thing with the OSM base map. So we apply different styles to that same underlying content, and we make it available to you. So for example, here's a OSM with a blueprint style applied to it. And here's a OSM with a dark canvas style applied to it. And here's OSM using an imagery hybrid style. So there's lots of these different styles available, and again, you can use these directly in your base maps, add them to your base map gallery. We even have a live OSM version, which you can take a look at, and you can see where people are doing their redlining right now. So wherever there's a red outline, you can see there's people that are actively engaging with the OSM content and providing some update. And of course, we have tools in ArcGIS to help you do that. One of the things I mentioned about doing different things with our base maps is the vector tile style editor, which you'll find in the Living Atlas apps section. So you can select a style. Let's begin with our world street map style. And I select that, and we'll have a view of what that style looks like at different scales. And you're actually working with the schema that's applied to the data here, the vectors. You can do things like you can change different colors. So you can choose different colors and apply that to the map. And that wasn't a very good choice, but I'm doing things quickly here. You can also begin just by randomizing things and then maybe using that to work on different effects and so forth that you like. So Vector Tile Style Editor provides detailed access to everything in all the layers, and you can remove layers, you can change colorations, highlight things, and the Vector Tile Style Editor is the way to go if you're looking for very detailed things. Now, recently, one of the things that we added in the new map viewer is the ability to work against the vector style base maps and apply particular styles and effects and things like that. So right now I'm working with the navigation base map, and I'll highlight it here, and I'll see here's the little effects that I can apply to this. And I can apply all sorts of different things. I can do things like we can increase the saturation. That didn't do too many things there. We can convert it to a sepia base map. We can turn that off. Let's get rid of the saturation. We can apply all sorts of different styling here to create a unique base map that highlights certain things that we're looking for. So there's some interesting things you can do. On top of this, with your operational layers, you can also use those same effects. So for example, these are healthcare facilities throughout LA, and I can apply a little bloom effect to those to make them kind of pop out of the base map. So combination of operational layers and also base maps with these new effects and blending, you can do some really interesting things. One of the interesting things you can do, I'm showing here, I've used two different base maps, and I've focused in on the urban area for, in this case, Mammoth Lakes, California. And as I zoom out, you'll see other urban areas also highlighted that you can go and visit here. So this is using one of the effects to kind of put the imagery base map in the background, and also using effects here to use or to highlight, in this case, it's the OSM data. And we can do things like apply a little bloom. We can kind of broaden the area, we can increase the radius, and so you can do some really creative and interesting things if you want to highlight on your town boundaries, your state boundaries, your city limits, or what have you. Now, live feeds are also very interesting. I've just chosen a few here. We have a number of fires that are still ongoing here in California, and these are updated regularly. There's interesting things that we can discover in other parts of the states as well. Not too much happening in other areas right now, but that's one example of live feeds, and that includes the perimeters. This is an example of the storm reports for the last week. So you can also filter on these to look at the latest storm reports, but this is everything that's been going on in terms of the NOAA storm reports over the last week. Here's another live feed, which is interesting. This is the VIIRS satellite hotspots. You can see there's a lot of different hotspots. Some of these hotspots could even be from fires. So here in this area of the world, some of these might be from fires rather than wildfires, but it's interesting what you can find here. For example, the Halemaumau crater in Kilauea in Hawaii is currently active. It's kind of brewing again, and you can see where the satellite has picked up hotspots around this particular area. So it's an interesting one. And there's lots more. There's live stream gauges, so you can look at and tap into any of the streams. When you click on these, you'll see the latest information about that and can expand that to look at additional details or go back to the source site and learn more. This is the live feeds dashboard. I can use this to kind of monitor what's going on. I can look at usage trends. I can see when things are being updated next. And if I want to, I can use this RSS link to subscribe to that service. Now, I mentioned quite a bit about demographics. Again, I can't cover, there's just so much of this. We've recently added the Census 2020, as well as the American Community Survey data. This is using the Census ACS data, and all of these are in the Living Atlas, and you can learn a lot more about the demographics and particular demographics, focusing on race or income or poverty levels or access to food and so forth throughout the Living Atlas demographic offerings. And these are ready to use inside of ArcGIS Pro or inside of ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. Now, here's the Living Atlas website. And when you go to the home page, you'll see information about what's new, what's going on, links to blog articles and so forth. What I've done here is I've signed in to this website. And the reason why I recommend doing that is because as you find interesting content that you want to look for, you can select it, you look at the item details, and you can decide if it's something that you're interested in. And then when you want, you can add it to your favorites. So here in my organization, if I click on content and go to my favorites, I will see that now that particular Living Atlas item is now favorited. So it's an easy way for me to browse for things that I like and be able to access them later. So another thing that you can do is look for things by category. You can look for particular things by using these filters. You can also look for specific content types, so maps or layers or scenes, story maps, and these you just check on the boxes here. You can combine these with keywords that you type in at the top here. And if you're looking for examples for what you might want to search for, you'll find those examples can be found here, and it will give you some ideas. You can even look for certain authors and so forth. Now, one of the things that I'll do here is I'll show how we can leverage some of the creative base maps. So I'll check that box there. And let's look for, here's a children's map, which is very much a specialty map. But let's go ahead and open this up. I want to add it to my organization's base map gallery. So what I'll do is, because I'm signed in, I can go ahead and I can share this directly into my custom base map gallery that I'm using in my organization. And now that I've done that, when I go back to my organization and now create a map, one of the base maps that I can choose is now that that children's map that I just added. So again, these are really interesting ways that you can leverage that Living Atlas website. Let's go take a look at the Living Atlas website again, and we're going to highlight just a couple of different apps. So let's go to the Apps tab, and there's lots of really interesting things here. There's Drought Aware, There's air quality, there's hurricane aware. One of the new ones, and one of my favorites, is actually this one. It's called World Imagery Wayback. And what this app lets you do is look at our archive of world imagery base map data and look at it through time. So here I'm zoomed into the Las Vegas area. I can click this button to just look at things where there's been change over time. I can hover to see that change. We added a swipe capability where I can use this to kind of look at change over time. So that swipe is very interesting. And we also just recently, just with in the last couple of months, we added this capability which lets you create an animation of change. So I can actually select layers here, add them to web maps, or I can even save this animation as an animated GIF and use it elsewhere, a website, and so forth. Let's go back to that Living Atlas page and let's perhaps just take a look at some of the other ones that are there. A Landsat Explorer app allows you to explore Landsat imagery. There's information about current COVID. There's USA wildfires, and there's air quality aware. We'll take another quick look at this. I just invite you to go explore these and try them out. These are showcases for Living Atlas content, but they're also useful for you to use no matter where it is that you're interested in. So you can see here I can click on one of the air quality monitoring stations and I can not only look at the forecast, but I can also get an idea about the demographics of the impacted population in this particular area. So let's go ahead and let's move on to Business Analyst Online. I mentioned this is one of my favorite apps, and I'm going to do a really quick little example here. Here I am in Los Angeles. These are healthcare facilities. Let's go ahead and choose one of these. One of the things I might want to do is create a buffer around this facility and then go ahead and try to learn more. So I can create rings, I can do drive time, I can do walk time. Let's do drive time, and we'll go ahead and apply that. So this is the drive time around that particular facility. You can see it just happened instantly. Now I can create some interesting infographics that let me learn more about the population that's there. So I can see what the population is, what their education is, what their income is, and I can explore other ones. I can create custom infographics as well. So this is actually a very powerful way to learn more about your community. I think with that, I'm going to stop the demo and we'll go ahead and we'll let you ask some questions and we'll be happy to answer those. I'll let Megan monitor those questions.
Thanks, Bern. There's so much great content. Thanks for sharing all that. So we've gotten a few questions. The first one we received is content free to use in the Living Atlas?
And the answer is yes. So the Living Atlas content, a lot of it is, you don't even need to have an account to access it. And that's where you look at those badges. If you see the subscriber badge, that means that you need to have an ArcGIS account to access it. If you see that premium subscriber, you know that you need an account, but it's also going to cost some credits to use that. And that's mostly the high-end demographic content, like our tapestry segmentation content. But for the most part, Living Atlas content can be used freely. You can put it in any application. Even the subscriber content, if you use those in the instant apps, it's automatically proxied. So you can share this with the public, you can share this with decision makers, and they're not prompted to have to sign in to be able to see the map or the app that you put together.
Okay, great, thanks. And then we have another question. Can data from Living Atlas be used offline in apps like field maps?
Yes, so data from Living Atlas can be used and can be extracted and make those map packages that are part of what you would take out in the field in a disconnected environment. And that's actually one of the reasons why we focused a lot on our vector tile-based maps and vector layers. Those really lend themselves for downloading and taking out into field apps.
Okay, and we've gotten a couple questions on Business Analyst. I'll try to combine these here. So is Business Analyst free? And then is Community Analyst now part of Business Analyst?
Okay, both very good questions. A Business Analyst web is what we focus on. I'd actually have to double check to see if there's anything extra in Community Analyst that is not yet in Business Analyst, but Business Analyst web especially is the premier product. It's not free, it's an additional product that you get a subscription for, but it's very powerful, very useful, and often overlooked.
Okay, and here is kind of a two-part question here. Are there any workflows where I can download data into ArcGIS Pro and use for analysis like overlay analysis, especially interested in the live layers like traffic, incidents, or weather? And also, is it a violation of licensing to convert the services to a file geodatabase, for example, to perform spatial analysis?
Okay, so the first part of that question is you don't have to download it necessarily to use an ArcGIS Pro. You can just connect to it. So all those live feeds that we went through, you just can connect to them through ArcGIS Pro. For doing analysis, you're going to be using either vector layers or the feature layers, and you can apply analysis directly to those in ArcGIS Pro. There's no downloading or conversion to a file geodatabase. It's not necessary. And in fact, especially for live feeds, I would not recommend downloading that because you want to work with the live information, the latest and greatest, rather than a snapshot of that. There's no issues if you do want to convert that to a file geodatabase. All the Living Atlas content is intended for use within ArcGIS products, so you can do whatever you would like with those in whatever way that you feel that you need to. But again, I recommend just connecting to the service directly, and you can do your analysis in Pro directly against those layers.
Okay, and next question, how do I become an authoritative contributor?
Okay, the best way to do that is to go to the Community Maps site. So let's see here, let's go to the Living Atlas website. And you can just go ahead and look at the contribute button up here. And if you click that, you'll find information about the program. And if you click this join the community button, that'll get you in and get you connected to the resources that you use to either edit the vector-based maps, add some details, or to contribute your imagery, elevation, or addresses.
Okay, and another question here. What keywords do you use to research rule and deep learning packages?
Okay, that's actually another very good question. Let's take a look at that. So we'll go to the Browse tab. And one of the things that you can do here is just begin by saying deep learning packages. So you'll see them. Here's a deep learning package, right? And you can also connect to the source here, but you'll find just by using deep learning or learning keywords like that, you'll find some really interesting ones here: road extraction, window and door extraction, parcel extraction, pool detection. There's a lot here, and you can learn more about each of those by, again, clicking on the item details and then reviewing what's said there. It'll tell you how to leverage it in various ways, and the owner of that is a user profile called Esri Analytics, and you can also choose that, and you can view all of the items, all of the tools that are published under that profile by clicking on that profile and looking at what they've done here or what's been collected there.
Okay, and another question mentioning that deep learning application. I am trying to get building footprints so that I can figure out how much infill space is available. I found something that turned out to be a deep learning application. Can I do what I need to do in OSM Basemap?
Okay, that's an interesting question as well. So this deep learning package, this building footprint extraction, is designed to work against imagery. So perhaps you've got some high resolution imagery that you've recently obtained for your community. This is a deep learning package that you can use that will extract the outlines of those buildings directly from that imagery. Now, one of the things that you talked about was OSM. So let's go back and take a look at that. What we've been doing is we've been extracting layers from the OSM content and we've been publishing those as separate layers. So here's one called OSM buildings, and you'll find this in the Living Atlas, and these are all the buildings that are part of the OSM delivery. And as I zoom in, you'll see the buildings exposed. These are vector tiles that you can do additional work or analysis with, and you'll see that they're shaded, and you can identify those. You can even filter and query for these. So we've been working on bringing the different layers out of OSM and making them available to you. So here's leisure and tourism locations, and there's others that you'll find as well as you search and browse Living Atlas for the OSM content.
Okay, well, thanks, Bern. So that is all the time, or all the questions we have time for today. If we didn't get to your question, we will try to follow up with you directly. We want to thank you for attending our webinar today, and also want to let you know that our next webinar in the series will be Embracing a GIS-Centric Digital Twin to Run Your Community. And that webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, November 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific. And you can register now at the webinar series page listed here. And again, if you can please take a minute to answer the 4 short questions in our survey that will pop up on your screen after the webinar, we would greatly appreciate it.
And I'd like to add, I'm sorry, Megan, I'd like to add on to that, I'll be reviewing the questions. They went by pretty quickly here. So I'll take a look at those and we'll try to get answers to you. And you can always email me directly if you have any questions about Living Atlas or content. Email is bzukowski@esri.com. And you should be able to figure out how to spell my last name, and just drop me an email. I'll be happy to help you out and answer any additional questions that you might have.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Bern. It was great. And thank you all again for joining us today. And again, you'll receive an email with the link to the recording in the next week or so. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.